I never believed in haunted objects until the night I inherited my grandmother's dolls. A collection so old that their porcelain skin had yellowed like forgotten bones, their glassy eyes permanently fixed in expressions that felt less like innocence and more like quiet accusation. And when the boxes arrived at my apartment after her funeral, stacked neatly like coffins in the hallway, I remember laughing nervously and telling myself they were just toys, relics of a lonely woman's hobby. Yet even then something felt wrong, because the moment I lifted the lid of the first box, a coldness spilled out as if the air itself had been trapped with them for decades. And inside were dolls dressed in Victorian lace, their fingers chipped, lips cracked, hair brittle and tangled, and every single one of them was facing upward, staring directly at me, which was impossible because I hadn't opened the box yet, or at least that's what I told myself, and that was the first lie I ever told to survive the nights that followed. Nights where sleep became impossible because I began to notice small things that could be explained away if you were desperate enough to cling to sanity, like how I'd leave the dolls sitting on the shelf facing the wall, only to find them facing the bed by morning, or how their shadows seemed to stretch longer than the light allowed, or how sometimes, when I was brushing my teeth or checking my phone, I could swear I heard the faint click of porcelain touching porcelain, like tiny footsteps freezing the moment I turned around. And I tried to rationalize it, blamed drafts, vibrations from passing trucks, my own grief, until the dreams began. Dreams where I was lying paralyzed in bed as the dolls stood in a circle around me, their mouths opening impossibly wide as something dark and wet spilled out, whispering my name in my grandmother's voice. And I'd awake drenched in sweat to find the dolls no longer on the shelf, but scattered across the floor, closer to the bed than they had been before, always closer. And I told myself I must have moved them in my sleep until I started locking my bedroom door and placing a chair beneath the handle, only to wake up one night to the sound of wood creaking and see the chair slowly sliding across the floor as if pulled by invisible hands. And when the door finally opened, I saw them lined up in the hallway, heads tilted, eyes gleaming in the dark, and I screamed, slammed the door shut, and spent the rest of the night with my back pressed against it, whispering prayers I hadn't spoken since childhood. But morning brought no relief, because the dolls were back on the shelf, perfectly arranged, dust-free, as though nothing had happened. And that's when I noticed the marks on my arms, small bruises shaped like fingerprints, too tiny to be human, and memories I didn't recognize began surfacing, flashes of my grandmother's house, a locked room I was never allowed to enter, the smell of mold and iron, the sound of crying that she said was just the pipes. And as the days passed, the dolls became bolder, appearing in rooms I hadn't placed them in, sitting on chairs, perched on the couch, standing at the foot of the bed, always freezing the moment I looked directly at them, like predators who knew the rules of the hunt. And I tried to record them, setting up my phone, leaving the room, hoping to catch proof. But every time I checked the footage, the video skipped, frames missing, corrupted exactly where movement should have been, except once. One terrible time, when the video showed me sleeping as the dolls slowly turned their heads toward the camera, their mouths curling into something that almost resembled a smile, and behind them, reflected in the dark screen of the TV, was my grandmother, her face twisted, eyes hollow, standing among them like a proud collector. And that was when I finally understood the truth she had hidden all those years. That the dolls were never just dolls, they were vessels, prisons made of porcelain and cloth, each one holding a piece of something that should never have been human, something my grandmother fed with attention, love, and eventually, blood. Because I remembered now, remembered the missing children from her town, the way she'd always say they were safer with her, the way she'd sing to her dolls at night. And I realized with sickening clarity that when she died, whatever pact she'd made had passed to me. And the dolls weren't just moving because they were haunted. They were hungry, and I was the only one left to feed them. And when I tried to burn them, the fire refused to touch them, curling away like a frightened animal. And when I tried to throw them out, they returned, always returned, sitting patiently in my living room, as if amused by my efforts. Until one night I woke to the sound of whispering so loud it felt like insects crawling inside my skull, and I saw them moving freely now, no longer bound by the rule of being unseen, their joints bending wrong heads, rotating too far, crawling across the ceiling like spiders. And they spoke in voices layered with many mouths, telling me how my grandmother had promised them a new caretaker, how my blood carried the same invitation. And as they surrounded me, pressing their cold porcelain faces against my skin, I understood the final horror, that the dolls were never meant to kill me, because death would release them. Instead they needed me alive, needed my soul slowly hollowed out, reshaped, until one day I would sit among them, still breathing, still smiling, still singing to the next generation of dolls that would arrive in boxes stacked neatly like coffins in someone else hallway, and now as I write this with trembling hands, I can feel them behind me, standing just out of sight, waiting for me to stop looking, because that's when they move. And if you've made it this far, if you felt that chill crawl up your spine, then they already know you're here, watching, and soon, when you look away, they'll move for you too.